What's up, friends, and welcome back to the channel. So here's a fun social experiment. Ask a group of friends what they do for sleep and see what kind of answers you get.
Definitely sleeping in silver-lined EMF clothing. Night night.
Oh God, what is this?
I call it a super sleep because it's a sleep where you know you're going to be in bed for at least 10 to 11 hours.
So first and foremost, my number one hack is probably the Aura Ring. I got this in 2019 and it really made a difference.
All right, my number one sleep hack is not having friends, because anytime you have friends, they want to socialize and you just can't go to bed on time.
What? Is that not funny?
Now, that's just 4 of my friends in the health space. And as you can see, their answers are pretty much all over the place. I mean, I think we'd all agree to avoid heaps of caffeine before bed, but for the most part, everyone seems to have their own little solid recipe for good sleep that, just works. And for a while there, so did I. That is, up until a couple months ago when my life took a 180. My stress got so out of hand that I quickly found myself incapable of doing this thing I once knew so well called sleep. Out the window went all the supplement stacks, the crazy routines, the fancy gadgets. I just got back to basics and rebuilt my sleep arsenal from scratch, which I've got to say, kind of works better than before. So in this video, I'm going to share with you what my new sleep toolkit looks like, explain the rationale behind its design, and then go over some key factors that you might want to consider when building your own. So let's kick things off with the first thing you'll want to think about for your toolkit that can really make or break a good night of sleep, and that is temperature. Sleep too cold and your REM cycle takes a big hit. Sleep too hot and you'll likely compromise on deep. And so really the best thing you can strive for with sleep is temperature moderation. I know, that sounds boring, but hear me out. Part of this process, it's kind of totally out of our control. After all, the body is a master thermoregulator, but that doesn't make it impervious to some modern, everyday disruptions. Because, well, if that were the case, night sweats wouldn't be a thing. But they are very much a thing. And if you've ever suffered from them, then you probably know how much they suck. So what to do about all this? The good news here is a lot. But we'll start with the thing that I think perhaps drives the most consistent value over time, and that is the 8 sleep. Because when your mattress regulates its own temperature, you don't have to do any of the work. And I love that because sometimes I can be lazy. Now, I've talked extensively about 8 sleep before, and all the bells and whistles that you get with it, from sleep tracking to my favorite, the built-in alarm. But perhaps the feature most relevant to this discussion is their autopilot mode. What this means for you as a sleeper, is that your bed basically goes to work for you overnight. Because the pod is designed to monitor all these ambient changes in real time, 24/7. And so it will automatically adjust the temperature of your bed as these changes are happening to basically meet your needs, which are based on your sleep history and preferences. So if you're like me and you typically run hotter at night, maybe because you sleep with not 1, but 2 weighted blankets, then you can set up your autopilot mode to run on the cooler side. Now, sure, it does take some time for these auto adjustments to get just right. It's not always perfect from day one. Come on, people. But I've got to say, over time, wow, the pod gets really smart. Like maybe even a little too smart at predicting your needs. But I just let it basically do its thing because I have 3 years of sleep data to prove that something is definitely working. Okay, so aside from 8 sleep, what else can you do to optimize for your temperature at night? And well, I have a couple of to-dos and to-don'ts, but we can start with the to-dos. Number 1 is get warm. Something like a warm bath or maybe even a few minutes in the sauna. But we're talking like 10 to 20 minutes at 105 degrees max, not a marathon sauna session. The point is, try not to overdo it at night. In fact, I'd say it's actually less about the heat and really more about the cooling down after, because that is what's gonna mimic the natural drop in body temperature that basically tells your body, hey, it's time for sleep. Another temperature trick to keep your body cool, this is kind of a weird one, but wear socks and gloves to bed. So the rationale behind this rather strange sleep attire is to basically help redistribute heat in the body. Because when you're sending more blood flow to the hands and the feet, you're inevitably losing some of the heat at your core. So potentially this could be one way to kickstart deep sleep and maybe even keep you in deep sleep longer. I'm not 100% sure yet. In fact, I'm in the process of testing this out, but I heard this from Matthew Walker, so obviously it's true. Okay, on to the don'ts. 1, avoid late day exercise. I know sometimes this simply can't be helped, especially if you're like training for a big marathon or something. But I would say in general, a good rule of thumb for cutoff is 2 to 3 hours before bed, really to just get your heart rate down and give your body enough time to properly recover for sleep. Another thing is you might want to avoid the ice baths at night, mainly because they can really jack up your dopamine levels. At least that's the case for me. That being said, I will say something, if you do like to get cooler at night, is just do 30 seconds of cold at the end of a shower. That has actually worked really well for me for sleep. That's something my friend Kyle turned me on to. So yeah, I would say try that, but for prolonged cold exposure, I just get a lot more benefit doing it earlier in the day rather than later. Moving on to the second biggest factor to consider if your end goal is high quality sleep, you're gonna wanna take a look at your stress management. Candidly, I am not a big fan of this phrase, stress management. To me, it makes stress sound so simple and benign. Sure, you just take your stress and you manage it like an employee. But guess what? Stress doesn't always work like that. Now, if you had asked me about my stress levels a year ago, I probably would have told you that I figured it out and I had it under control. But then I got a taste of some real life-altering, ass-handing stress, and well, everything changed. My health took a huge toll. For goodness sakes, my biological age went up 10 years. More on that in another video. And I lost control of the one area of my life where I actually had my shit together: sleep. Of course, getting bad sleep only made things worse for what felt like an endless cycle of seemingly unmanageable stress. So why am I telling you all this? I promise it's not to scare you. I'm sharing it because, well, this wasn't all that long ago. And so if I could go through hell and back and come out on the other side of stress, still not perfect, but definitely a lot better, I'm pretty freaking sure that you can too. So let's talk about some of the things I did initially to help me just move through the stress for the sake of sleep. Breath work before bed, game changer. Now, I don't care if it's box or belly or yoga nidra, whatever, as long as it's not Wim Hof. But the reason breath work is at the top of my list, aside from being free, is that It's single-handedly the quickest and most effective way to calm the nervous system. And you will see this reflected almost immediately in certain biometrics like your heart rate, your blood pressure, and your HRV. And well, I know you didn't ask, but if you're looking for a great app to get started with this, definitely check out Othership. It's kind of like the SoulCycle of breathwork apps. Well, minus the bikes and big egos. It's fun that I said that because I did work there. But the app, it is really well choreographed. There's lots of variety, and I gotta say that audio quality is superb. So I'll link that below if you guys wanna go and check that out. As far as other strategies go, I mean, I wish I had something super novel and revelatory to share with you all. But the truth is that the things that worked best for stress, they were all pretty basic. And I think that's okay, because sometimes we fall out of certain habits, like journaling and meditation, when we're just really busy or things are going pretty well. And so we just forget how effective these very simple things are for stress until we're, of course, in the throes of something and we're kind of forced to pick them back up again. That being said, I do have some new insights and even some new ways of incorporating these older habits, like journaling, for instance. I personally found it to be super effective to do at 3 in the morning. No, I didn't set my alarm to go off then. That would have been funny. Nope, I just kept waking up with terrible bouts of insomnia. And what I learned from doing this is that writing in this half awake, half asleep brain state, it can lead to some very profound thoughts and realizations. At least that was the case for me. And not too long after that, the insomnia actually went away. Now, as far as meditating goes, this is another big one for me that I am still doing nightly. Per the suggestion of a friend, I started using the Waking Up app again, and I actually went back to the beginning with their intro course. And all I can say is just, wow. I mean, even if you are an experienced meditator with, I don't know, 15 silent retreats under your belt, good for you. But I would still recommend doing this course because Sam Harris has this way of shedding light on some really core principles of meditating that actually have deepened my practice. So highly, highly recommend. And then supplement-wise, yet again, I found the basics, they just worked best. So for me, what that looks like right now usually involves some type of magnesium supplement before bed. I go with either natural stacks or biooptimizers, but you can find something that works for you. Just make sure it has L-threonate in it, since this is the one that's gonna actually cross the blood-brain barrier, and it tends to be the best for stress and sleep. Now, occasionally, I know this is a little controversial, but I'll also take melatonin, simply if I just have trouble falling asleep. But it doesn't have to be a high dose. Like 2 milligram is totally fine. And it doesn't have to be an every night thing. I think that's where people get kind of tripped up. In wrapping up on stressors in the body, well, I would be remiss to not address some other lifestyle things as well, like alcohol. And by now, I think most people understand its ramifications on sleep, so I'm not gonna go too deep into the weeds here. But I have played around with some of these adaptogenic alternatives from companies like Kin and 3 Spirits. They kind of mimic some of the relaxation effects of drinking, minus the hangover. And I gotta say, they actually taste pretty good. No, it's not like you're gonna be walking around in a stupor or, you know, it's definitely a little bit more subdued than having, I don't know, a glass of wine. But they do seem to be getting a bit more popular these days. In fact, I even saw one offered at a restaurant in LA. Granted, it is LA, but still. Anyway, I think they're worth checking out if you want to switch up your beverages with friends. So I'll link them up for you below, and let me know what you think. And then the other physical stressor that you might want to think about when it comes to sleep is fasting. So if you're doing some type of, strict keto diet or prolonged fasting, this can definitely lead to some of those middle of the night unexpected wake ups, because the brain, it uses a lot of energy for sleep. And so when there's nothing left to burn, cortisol, it's gonna spike. And all of a sudden you find yourself catapulted out of bed. So if this keeps happening, try taking a teaspoon or two of raw honey before bed. I did this trick for a while and it really works because it's working on the glycogen stores in your liver to supply more fuel to the brain during sleep, which is what you want. I mean, sure, it might kick you out of ketosis, but I think for the sake of sleep, it's well worth it. And so that is kind of the wrap here on all the things that are in my toolkit right now. It's not to say that I will not be reintroducing some fancy new gadgets in the future, but I think the main point here, again, is to just reinforce how important it is to dial in those fundamentals before you start adding anything else to your sleep. And so when you're designing your nightly routine and what you want to include in your sleep toolkit, just keep stress and temperature kind of at the forefront, because these are going to be two of the biggest players when it comes to getting a good night of sleep. So that is it for right now. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you like this video, maybe share it with a friend, or if you know someone who's struggling with their sleep, please share it with a friend and hit the like button and all the other things. And until we meet again, I cannot wait to catch you on the next one.